Welcome to Harnessing the Power of AI, Innovation, Creativity, and Social Impact. We're so glad to have you with us this morning. We're going to get started with a few introductions, and then we'll jump into some of the background and some of the material. So, your presenters today are me. First, so I'll introduce myself. Um, my name is Missy Maseko. I'm currently the Director of Public Policy, AAUW California, along with the wonderful Amy Hom. Um, I'm also a professor in primarily in political science, but I'm in four departments at the University of California. At California State University, Long Beach. And I am the co-founder and owner of a DEI consultancy called Willing Observers, and none of that seems to make sense for being here to talk to you about AI. But I'm going to focus a little bit on education and how it's being how it's impacting higher education. I also have a background, one of my degrees is in linguistics, and that has made me have some investment in understanding language and cognition as it works with AI and AI programming. So I will turn it over to, I believe, Maria to introduce themselves before we get started.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Maria Lupatini, and I'm down in San Diego. My background is I have been a lifelong data scientist since I left grad school, and in the process of my career, over 40 plus years. I won't tell you all the numbers, but I have applied, what they call now data science, and more recently, artificial intelligence along the way. So I either has been an employee or an entrepreneur in the process of my career. And I have applied basically data science, machine learning, statistics, and all different areas. I actually hold a couple of patents that are machine learning applications. But more recently, I started a nonprofit this year, and it is called AI for Kindness. I've been doing a lot of volunteer work with the San Diego Food Bank, and I had this idea last year that it would be interesting if we could apply some AI voice technology to help solve some food insecure problems. And in parallel, many years ago, I had a consulting firm called Infomaker Inc. It still exists, so that's the for-profit. So I will do AI consulting occasionally. And I actually started Infomaker back in the 90s, and we made the Inc. 500 then. And I did it for up until about 2004. And at that point, jumped over and worked for Qualcomm and ultimately became a director of engineering there and started multiple teams. And the last team I started was called the Machine Learning Group. So what's funny is from the seed of a couple of people, I just heard recently from one of the ladies I hired as an intern, now runs a group, and they have like 20 people around the world just from the group I started that are doing AI and machine learning applications for Qualcomm on the chips. So I've got some interesting stuff to talk to you about. It'll be broad-based, and I hope you will like it.
Thanks, Maria. Shauna is here as well, and Shauna is going to introduce herself and as she starts her portion. But welcome to Shauna as well, and thank you all for being here today. So, um, a little bit about the session. So here is what we're going to work through today. First, just a little introduction. Maria is going to give a little overview just to set a baseline. What is AI? I'm going to talk a little bit about historical context and how we tend to respond to new technologies as they're introduced. Part one will be AI education and change, and I'll talk to you a bit about just what's happening in my own higher education classrooms. Part two is AI and creativity, and that will be led by Shauna. Part three, AI for social good, led by Maria. And then you have many questions And please continue to give us those questions during the webinar today, but we'll close with an open Q&A session. And that will include, we've tried to incorporate as many of your questions as possible for when you sign up to the webinar, but please give us questions throughout so that we can answer them in the last section. So with that, I will get us started with the introduction, and I will hand it off to Maria to give us a little overview of what is AI.
Well, AI, as you know, stands for artificial intelligence. And basically, at its simplest, it's trying to copy us. Um, and just to give, I didn't put this in the slide, but AI, in fact, encompasses not just what I will be talking about, large language models, but it really encompasses all kinds of mathematical techniques. But these specifically models that we'll talk about today, that are based on language models, they learn like a student from all kinds of text and repetition and sources of data. They can think like a doctor, and it's fascinating to watch these AIs as you give them the prompt, and they will now show you their thinking process, the step by step, what it's doing, and then the perceiving, which is phenomenal, which has really happened for the public to use in the last year or so, where you can give it a picture and a look at it. But prior to that, for applied applications, you can give it data or pictures to look like it's seeing an X-ray. Next slide, please. So as I said, we'll talk about a lot here about these large language models. And I don't know if people are familiar, but there's many of them out there that the public can use right now. It's ChatGPT is the most common one talked about, but Claude is out there, heavily used and very popular in the coding area. Gemini is from Google, also quite powerful and phenomenal. Yeah, actually incredibly powerful. It can take in a prompt that has millions of words in it, believe it or not. And another one I should have mentioned called Perplexity, which if you haven't tried it, try it. It's really based to help do research. And what I like about it, most people use it for this reason, it gives you the source of the information. So you can go dig in and go, why did it tell me this? Where did it come from? But fundamentally, they're all built on what's called a deep learning algorithm. I don't know if you're familiar. It's like a neural net. It's called a neural network. Is another is in that category. So it's like your brain synapses all being connected mathematically. And so what they've done with these models is they've gone out and given it all this text and content and document and scraping it from books, articles, the internet, and then also over the years, and it's still doing and improving on images. I mean, many, many years ago when they started, they wanted to teach these models to distinguish between cats and dogs. That's how it started. And now you can go in and very fine grain do phenomenal things. With these models, since they're like trying to mimic your brain, with your synapse connections, it learns the patterns in the structure, in the language, the connections. And fundamentally, what these models do is these language models kind of predict the next word, believe it or not, is what they're doing. And so they are probabilistic models. And so it's not, so they're guessing with a high probability. Then, okay, go. So, but you at this point, they've gotten so sophisticated with billions of like neural connections in your brain, the equivalent, truly billions. It can understand now these complex questions. So they're trying to be human-like. In fact, the for-profit companies are trying to make them more human-like and above human-like as the days go by. But what's wonderful about these models is they're conversational and they can be applied for good. And you'll see today how they are. And at the very end, my slide, I'll show you how Esley will talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. And um, I, stopped myself from nerding out on the large language models. It's a really, really interesting and cool thing. Um, but we can give you some sources if you want to read more about those. We're, I'm going to talk a little bit though about how we can think about AI as part of, this kind of longer history of us, thinking about new technologies because part of both the questions that we got from registration and the questions that I know I get pretty consistently in my classrooms and just like watching how things are kind of happening with the introduction of AI technologies is that there's a lot of response, right? There's a lot of strong response to it. So, in thinking about how we respond to new technologies, right, the introduction of a new technology isn't simply a technical advancement. It's not neutral. We're in a process because it's so new of really negotiating the meaning of what it is and how we're going to use it. And this is something that, humans do every time there's some sort of new technology. And I'll give you an example of a very new piece of technology, not new at all. So, do you all recognize what this is? Um, this is a very old, right, phonograph. So, if I asked you, what is this for, right? Um, you know, I am guessing that you all have a similar response. What do you use a phonograph or a record player for? Most of you probably use it for listening to music. Or, but what did the inventor of the record player intend for it to be used for? Not necessarily for listening, but for recording. That's why it's called a record, R-E-C-O-R-D, record, a record player. So the way that it was intended to be used by the person that created it or the people that created it doesn't, it matters, but not entirely because we collectively take something that is created and we negotiate what it is and what it means once it gets released into the world. And that's important for thinking about what's happening with the technology that we're going to be talking about today, because, right, we are collectively deciding how it's being used, including how it's being used for good. So another thing to think about with new technology, I gave you a clip from Teen Wolf here because, I think this is a fun kind of also trope in film in this time. But this is not just how we think about how we negotiate new technologies, but in thinking about how things are integrated, they said they start to become normal and natural to us. So the next time you watch a movie, think about how you hear people on the screen versus how you hear people in your everyday life. When people are really far away from you, it doesn't sound the same as when they're next to you. But when you watch a film, the sound usually remains consistent, whether or not the characters that are speaking are far away or whether they're next to you. And so we have watched films so much that we don't think about this as not being something that's normal. And so the integration of sound technology in films has changed the way that we think about sound, right? That we hear the world and what we think is normal in different contexts. So those examples both show that new technology development is influenced by those who create it, right? And who they are. Those understandings are based on, right, the people that create it, they have beliefs and worldviews and intentions for what they should be used for. And new technology use is influenced by collective agency, who we are and what we decide to use it for. So the way that we use and understand new technology isn't inevitable, and we have control over what we can do with it. So besides, even though, right, we know that we have more power, right, to figure out what to do with this technology. Um, new technologies usher in different kinds of cultural shifts, right? They definitely change the way that we perceive the world. They can change the way that we interact with each other. Right? Think about, new technology like cell phones, right? And text messaging. They change the way that we understand what it means to relate to each other, even, right, with artificial intelligence, what intelligence means. how we understand things like even the human body before computers. We didn't think about brains as computers. Um, how we understand deeper issues and morality. And because of all of that, the way that new technologies impact our life can challenge those kinds of deeper understandings. So we get these responses with new technologies often that it will either be the best thing that has ever happened and move everything forward, or it's the worst thing and it will destroy us. And this is definitely something that we've seen in AI. I think I have, yeah, some things about polarized feelings in here in the slides. And just again, to think about this historically, with AI, this is a really human response. And this is one of my favorite examples for thinking about how humans are beautifully predictable. And this happens cyclically every time there's a new technology. So I'm going to take you back into a place where you never anticipated the AI workshop taking you, and that is um, to the 4th century BCE, which was another time in which humans all had a collective response to a new technology. Can you think of the new technology that might have been advanced for communication in the 4th century BCE in, say, Greece? Um, if, like, we're not playing Jeopardy, too bad, right? But um, if you know who this dude is here in this image, this is Socrates. So Socrates is a Greek philosopher who lived in the 4th century, and he really, really was concerned about the new communication technology at the time, and that was writing. So he was a huge fan of dialectic. He thought it was a scientific form of speech. The Socratic method is what we use in our classrooms, right? The teacher asks you a question, you respond with evidence. The teacher confirms your response or denies it and provides evidence. You present a counter argument, you go back and forth. Through that kind of interaction, Socrates thought you could come to a higher truth. And so he thought writing would destroy the memories and minds of intelligent people. He thought it would rot your brain. He thought that it would be really bad for democracy. He thought it was something that would basically destroy the things that he held dear about human interaction, human communication, and politics. So when we think about I implore you to think about, right, this kind of history and both, the outcomes of those negotiations, but just knowing that new technologies can be, right, often garner this kind of human response. And we've seen it even more recently with this idea that there's a degradation of all kinds of things with like the introduction of cell phones, right? Kids today can't write because they're texting, right? Is that true? No, right? Does it mean that things might be changing in the way that we think about and approach certain kinds of writing? Yes, right? Kids don't communicate with one another because of screens, right? So these are things that have been also, right, more kind of recently negotiated. But the point here is that there tends to be a this kind of polarizing thing. Will this degrade or revolutionize society? Is it the best or is it the worst? And right, this is really like where we're kind of at with AI. This isn't to say that existing concerns around, right, AI aren't real, but to note that both the revolutionary potential and the risks are probably too big, and we're probably somewhere in the middle. And we're in the midst of integrating this technology into our lives. So we have the power to figure out what they mean and how we'll use them and how we'll regulate them, because that is something that hasn't happened a lot yet. So I wanted to just touch on some of the potential, right? Here are the downside risks. These are the kinds of headlines that have been all over the place. And right, the risks and downsides, right? There are some. I can also include in our materials the most recent kind of Pew research from both kind of AI professionals and the wider public on risks and benefits and regulatory potential. But some of the risks and downsides that are articulated, that need to be dealt with, right? But that probably don't line up with these headlines are a big one is inaccurate information, right? Impersonation and data misuse, those are common worries. They're worries for experts and for the public alike. So deep fakes are real. They've created issues from misinformation in the political sphere, unlawful use of individuals' likeness, in all sorts of places. In California this year, we were able to pass AB 626. Sorry if I've inverted the numbers, but that was a piece that created penalties around the deep fake use of children's images in potentially pornographic spaces. Really problematic, but we're in the midst of thinking about regulatory potential there. So those are potential issues, right? Those are things that we need to think about and deal with, but don't rise necessarily to the level of these headlines. Some other risks and downsides, right? Bias is inherent in representation and decisions, some decisions made by AI, and that's largely because of what the AI has been trained on thus far, and the training wheels are not training wheels that have been put on the models. So, for instance, right, so far, gender has been an issue. Men's views are better represented. If we think about, right, this in a binary system, English is dominant because it's mainly been fed English medium materials. And so the English speaking world has, better systems and better access. And the way we think in certain languages, um, impacts, right, how the machine thinks. So language and cognition are connected. So other things, right? AI is not necessarily friendly to the environment, but that doesn't mean that it's destroying the world, and those are things we might regulate. And another potential risk area is the use in weapons development, but again, regulatory potential there as well. So risks and downsides are exist, but that doesn't mean that they are like the destruction of humanity. Um, the potential upsides, right? This is from a recent 2025 Pew study. AI experts are more likely than the public to say that AI will have a positive effect on the United States over the next 20 years. So the people that are closest to it have a better sense probably of what the machines can do and cannot do. And the potential upsides, right? Things like increased efficiency for completing menial tasks, for finding information, for summarizing. You'll see some really great examples of that coming up shortly. Increased accessibility for some in educational and other environments. You may have experienced this yourself. Things like real-time captioning, image descriptions, voice command software. So increased accessibility is a huge potential good. It can be used for social good, parsing massive data sets to find patterns that can uncover new insights. It's been used for some really cool research that you will probably hear a bit more about in Maria's section. It can be used for brainstorming and problem solving and one-on-one conversations. And that's something that ends up, I know that I encourage my students to use as well in the classroom. So the last thing I will touch on before I talk about education and then turn it over to Shauna and Maria is a question that we got um, on our signups, and one that is consistently asked, and that is, will AI replace humans, right? Um, and before I get here, I'll stop here, right? So will AI replace humans? No. AI is a complementary technology, not a competitive technology. It will not and should not replace humans. So a few quick points here. AI was built by humans. It reflects the humans by which it was built. But that also means it was, right? built by certain humans, not all of humanity, that means that there's still a lot of work to do with humans thinking about translation and use cases. Over half the internet is in, again, English. This means that there are really cool, right, studies right now and people working on AI and AI applications and training AI outside of English and and what that can do and what it has done. So there's still a lot of work to do there and kind of development and translation. AI is getting better, but is still has communication areas to improve upon. Uh, the large language models themselves are, as Maria said, predictive, and they're still very kind of rule guided. But when we communicate, we know that there aren't always the best rules, right? We might have to kind of pivot a lot. And so there's still limitations on soft skills, emotional intelligence, pragmatic competence, and those are less rule guided and might change from person to person and place to place, like how you show respect to your best friend versus how you show respect to your kids, right? Um, some other areas like about, humans and why humans aren't going to be replaced, and this is complementary. There are some areas where AI likes to be assertive and correct. So fact checking is still really important, right? Because we need to think about, human fact checking, where the source material that the AI was fed comes from is also important. Sometimes there is not the equal weighing of information from a peer-reviewed article versus like your cousin's blog post. And so it will cite its own sources. But we need to still have humans, right, as a complementary technology to think about fact checking and source correction. Um, and in the end, I think something that Shauna is going to talk about quite a bit, that AI is complementary, but it can't replace the depth and breadth of human creativity or empathy or cultural context, which isn't, you know, necessarily represented in all the materials that it's trained on, nor would it be replicable given how big and vast and dynamic it is. So today we're not going to shy away from risks that AI presents, but we really, I think this crew together feels that, you can use AI for good, and we want to show you some of the potential values and provide you some pathways to harness that potential. So let me talk a little bit about how it has kind of impacted my college classroom. Um, and this is something that the headlines, that if I could, you know, go back here really quickly, a lot of the headlines right here, like there's one: AI is a clear and present danger to education. The educational coverage that I've seen on this so far is really seems dire. There have been tons of exposés on cheating in AI. I can tell you personally that every faculty meeting is about this right now. um, and there is concern about misinformation, lack of media literacy. I think one of the questions that we got from a participant signing up was the impact on critical thinking skills from students. And I want to say first that this is not an none of these questions. I mean, I guess some of them about AI and plagiarism, but these were problems before, right? Students were cheating very effectively before AI. Um, and they were already there. That was already an issue, right? That you did have some students that were plagiarizing before AI. Um, there was already a problem with misinformation. We were already grappling with issues of media literacy in the classroom. lack of critical thinking skills was already a problem given the way our education system is currently set up to memorize information and spit out correct answers rather than to take an open-ended problem and think through it critically. So, given the systemic issues of overly large class sizes, overworked and underpaid, right, faculty members, the adjunct system, right, the way our funding works in higher ed, I promise you these were already issues prior to AI. So, the critiques of AI are simply pointing, in my mind, to existing problems that require structural change. And so, what I'm going to talk about is one, how I've integrated AI into my classroom and how, right, I'm thinking about it, but two, how I am thankful for this moment because there are existing problems in higher education for all of these things that require structural change. And the kind of potential panic around AI has actually given me more leeway to deal with them in different ways, not just through AI integration. So here's how are we using, right? How am I using my agency to integrate AI into the classroom in ways that I think are good, right? So what am I doing? I am addressing AI head on. I'm telling students how to use it and how not to use it in the classroom, when what using it and not using it will do for their cognitive and skill development. Um, so here is a sample class that I teach. So I teach a class in political science. It's a constitutional law class. It's called Queer Law. And here are some things that I'm doing to try to integrate AI more productively into the system. First, the Cal State system has basically, thrown their weight behind integrating AI. So now when you log in to your kind of CSU portal, there is we call it a little chicklet that you can click on that takes you to, right, and like an AI for students and faculty members. So I believe we have ChatGPT. So what am I doing, right? I am using it and I'm telling the students to use it for the things that it is most useful for them. So for certain things like it's a law class, right? Case information, right? Who are the petitioners? What are the legal facts of the case? I ask them to brief cases. Yes, right? I tell them to use it to help them brief cases. I tell them to double check, but use it to help them brief cases. It makes finding that information far more efficient for them. And then that leaves room for me to do other things in the classroom. Of course, I encourage them to double check it against original source texts, as I would tell them to do that with anything they get from any source, including me. I always tell them to check me. I'm like, why do you believe everything I say just because I'm a professor, right? That doesn't make any sense. You should always read the original source. And so I tell them that for this as well. Um, what I, right, do tell them not to do. I tell them to use it for idea generation, but don't have it like full on write their papers about legal arguments. Is that more efficient for them? Yes. Why do I suggest that they don't? And how do I convince them? Um, One, I give them the case of the lawyer that was like, sanctioned because he had AI write his closing arguments and it did not accurately tell him the legal theory for the case or it's like case law. So, again, he could have just double checked, but I encourage them to double check, right? Instead of having it write their legal arguments, and I also have them read the source text for the cases and stress the importance of human innovation for creating new arguments to advance civil rights. And, that's this is part of it. And then I integrate things into the classroom. but that we need humans to be able to parse those arguments to help us move forward, to come up with new and innovative legal theory. And that, again, AI is a complementary tool, not a replacement for their own creativity and innovation. So we read legal decisions together, we read them in class, and I show them how it can help them advance civil rights law and civil rights causes. So this is all of this has helped me shift classroom management in a really positive way. Like I said, with the integration of AI, lots of universities are now encouraging their faculty members to actively rethink how they're administering their courses and doing this coursework. So I can do it in ways now that I have wanted to and I have dabbled in, but that might have been less acceptable in the past, especially in classes like constitutional law, right? When I say a constitutional law class, you probably think of a lot of dry and boring things, right? But um, because it forces everyone to rethink their approach, it's made innovation and creativity more acceptable in spaces that historically had been very kind of rote, right? Here is the legal theory. Here is what's happened in the past. Here is the precedent. Here is the changing case law. So, here, how I've changed specifically: one, I cover less material during the semester, but I leave more time for in-class discussions. In class, we do bonus games and oral responses. So I know that they're processing the material because we're doing it orally in real time, and I gamified a lot of the things I do in class. And I give them, right, they're responsible for one case. I have them pick it out of a hat. And I integrate little prizes in there. So they might, pick a case out of there, or they might pick like 20 bonus points. So I gamified it, but we do that kind of in class together. I also structure the class so that it can be administered for groups who want to work together, that encourage them to kind of build that kind of co-working mindset that is really important in the work world. All of my exams, all of them are online, open notes, and open book, all of them. But they're very specific to the course. So you would have a hard time being able to simply look up the answers, or right, have something generate the answers. And they're timed so that if you look up every answer, that means you're not able to finish the test. So they're open notes, open book online, but they have certain parameters that are about course information. I put the most missed questions on the next test so that learning is the point, not the kind of regurgitation of material, the grades. And the last thing that I'll talk about is I do creative projects. And so at the end of every semester, I do a showcase. I ask them all to adopt a case and then make something, create something, artwork, games, interactive things. One of these sets of students did a skit, and it is all to explain to a wider public what these cases are, what these legal cases are, and how they have an impact on the everyday lives of people. And so I have a set of students here that created, right, a mini play, right, and that they performed it. I have a set of students here that did interactive games that they use to explain what the cases are and how they have impacts in the world. So I've had students write songs in the past. I've had students choreograph dances. I've had students sculpt things. But it is a way to, take that kind of historically dry material, and it allows them to explore their creativity in explaining it to other people in ways that both cannot be generated, right, by AI, and that shows how, right, human creativity will continue to advance based on working in tandem with what AI gives us. So I will stop talking now and I will turn it over to Shauna, who is going to talk a little bit more about AI and creativity.
Thank you, Missy. Good morning, AAUW California. I'm Shauna Owning, a former GovTrek director and advocate for empowering young women in civic leadership. And I'm honored to be back with you today. It's actually kind of warming to my heart to join you again. And I want to thank you and the AAUW branches who champion educational equity, leadership, and opportunity for women. Since GovTrek, I rejoined We Connect the Dots as executive director. What We Connect the Dots is a nonprofit delivering technology, education, and workforce readiness programs to ages 13 to 18 and adults. My background includes over 20 years in the technology industry, and I also had the opportunity to work at Microsoft. So I'm very familiar with technology, and now I'm in a leadership role where I'm helping the next generation of innovators learn technology and learn to use AI. So today's lens will be on equitable access, education, and opportunity with generative AI. Yeah, perfect. So Gen AI can multiply creativity 10 to 100 times. I mean, it's just amazing what it's capable of. I'm sure you've seen it, what it can do with generative AI can do with images, what it can do with videos, and it's accessible for people in all roles. And anyone really can do it now. I mean, even if you didn't think you were creative, you can use a Gen AI to create amazing pieces. So that's wonderful, but there are some global gaps that we need to close. Next slide, please. As you know, AI is significantly transforming the way we all work, learn, and live. Yet marginalized populations are being excluded from the opportunities that these changes create. We believe that education is crucial to not only addressing poverty, but boosting AI literacy, economic growth, and creating more job opportunities. And it's our shared responsibility to make it accessible to everyone, everywhere. So let's talk about AI access, education, and opportunity. Digital access. Well, 70% of men versus 65% of women are online globally. In least developed countries, that's only 41% of men versus 29% of women. So there's a big portion that are not even online today. As far as education, AI adjacent degrees globally, women earn about 30% of the ICT degrees. How about the workforce? Women in AI, well, 30%, about 30% of AI professionals are women, with even lower representation in the global South. And there's a bigger issue at hand. Global youth unemployment is at about 13% for ages 15 to 24. This is highly concerning on so many levels. So what's the solution? Excuse me, I'm just adjusting something here. Our vision is to create a world where all individuals, regardless of gender or background, have equal access to high quality AI education and opportunities. In partnership with industry, government, and education, we aim to inspire and equip the next generation with the skills and the knowledge necessary to thrive in the future of work by fostering innovation, creativity, and lifelong learning. At We Connect the Dots, we're providing equitable access to STEAM education with measurable outcomes in skill development and career readiness. next slide, please. We also integrate resistance training throughout all of our programs. It's a trademarked neuroscience related approach to assess and build students' ability to overcome adversity and to form new mental habits and mental pathways with amazing outcomes. We see students coming from low-income backgrounds, students on the spectrum, and even youth immigrants who came here just a year ago and were struggling to build a new life for themselves. Now they are transformed into highly skilled and functional technology workers. We just had a cohort, 2 cohorts of our Upskill program, Upskill New York program, complete. And that's where we had a handful of youth immigrants. When I say youth immigrants, I mean over 18, but under 30. And these young individuals came here looking for a better life for themselves, but were struggling to find work. They joined our program and we trained them on foundational skills, which I'll get into in a minute what our Upskill program teaches. But they embraced the program, they learned these skills, and now they're out there working. It's a wonderful feeling to see this transition in folks that really weren't sure what they were going to do. They were working low-end jobs, that were working, you know, maybe at a Amazon warehouse, or as a clerk at a bakery or a coffee shop. I mean, with no real career pathway. So our primary, let's see, we also, I want to share that we also integrate the concept of building tech solutions that align with the UN Sustainable Development Goals in every student project and every program. Our primary programs include Upskill New York, the Global Hackathon, and the Global AI Summit. So on this slide here, an exciting note, we are launching our Global Hackathon next week. This is for ages 13 to 18, where youth come together from around the world to code, to innovate, and create. It's a free, dynamic learning experience for all skill levels, to master coding, to create a business concept that is aligned with the SDGs, and they compete on teams to win amazing prizes. It's a really fun event. It's all virtual, and it's free training and mentorship, all on the Microsoft Teams environment. This year, we are excited to announce that we're co-hosting with St. Xavier's School in Burdwan, India, to expand reach and cultural exchange. There are about 30 students in Burdwan that are already on our Microsoft Teams platform, and they're excited to collaborate with students here in the US. I love to see the creativity and the innovation coming out of these young students. And what they're going to do is prototype a conceptual business and a website for the UN SDGs. They'll get feedback from mentors and judges. They'll get access to a global peer network and gain confidence and skills. We also offer adult pathways to careers, which complements our youth training, and both feed into the idea of providing access, education, and opportunity. This Upskill New York program can be customized to younger ages easily, especially with how technically savvy these next generations are. Oh my goodness, I was tutoring in National City at a K through 12 school, and I don't know if you know this, but kindergartners are already being given iPads to take home with them and take back to the classroom the next day. Kindergarten. I did not have technology until I was in junior high school. Yeah, so I'm curious to see what that generation is going to be like as far as technology is concerned. Actually, can we go back to the Upskill program? I digress. I would just want to share that quick story about my tutoring experience. With the Upskill program, it's an 8-week program designed for students to explore and gain in-demand tech skills that provide pathways to careers in tech. Upskill delivers AI literacy to fluency, and from concepts to real projects and employment outcomes. Students learn the basics of business automation, AI integration, and this year we've added something new. They learn how to create AI generated images, videos, and brand building. Graduates are workforce ready with exposure to over 10 industry relevant tools such as Microsoft Office, Power Automate, Power Apps, ChatGPT, Canva, and Leonardo AI. And we offer certification in prompt engineering, Microsoft Power App fundamentals. Which brings us to the Global AI Summit. The summit brings together creators, change makers, and educators and industry leaders from around the world to explore how AI is revolutionizing the future of education, the workforce, and driving social change. What we're doing is we're empowering women and disadvantaged youth by providing training in a workshop format using Gen AI to create short form videos leveraging best-in-class tools. The focus will be on what we're calling the Youth SDG Spotlight. And this is where our participants are challenged to create AI-generated videos to inspire action on the SDGs. I was planning to share some videos, but there's a little technical glitch. So I'm going to share those links in the chat after my presentation here. I'd love for you to see what Gen AI is capable of today. I'm sure you've already seen some things, but I wanted to show you a concept of what we're having students work on. So I'm very proud of the impact we're making. Access to quality tech education is providing future-ready skills and job opportunities. Next slide, please. We see our students gain confidence, create portfolios and pathways into the workforce. So I'd like to also share some success stories. Our students are getting jobs. One of our students named Donna, she's based out of New York. She just completed our V8 cohort, Upskill New York cohort. She was a really standout student, but she was struggling to find work. She got a degree she got her bachelor's degree in IT or technology and couldn't find work. I mean, this economy is amazing, is confusing. I don't understand why young folks with skills and education cannot find work. That didn't happen in my generation, but we want to help. You know, our programs are helping. Donna was a really standout student. She's well-spoken. She showed leadership skills. So we placed her at one of our strong workforce experience partners, where she demonstrated her talent, her skills, her drive to succeed. And it turned out they offered her a job. So now she's working for a Microsoft partner. We're so proud of her, and that's just one success story. We have other success stories where folks are who are living in Nigeria took our AWS AI Challenge program, got certified, and now she's employed. It's exciting and it's inspiring to see these transformations. We deliver training that prepares students for tomorrow's challenges. Quickly, our core competencies include training, curriculum development, e-learning, and certifications. I think we differentiate ourselves through customization. We can customize our programs to any population. We bring expertise and years of experience in the tech industry, and we harness technology. We invite you to be part of the movement that is reimagining what's possible with tech and AI. I would like to just ask for you to contact me if you're interested in sponsorship of our programs or a partnership opportunity. We have a proven model and outcomes and a national and global network to feature and showcase your brand. We would love to deliver programs in your community. Again, we focus on ages 13 to 18, and we can, and also 18 plus. We also want to give you a warm welcome to invite your students ages 13 to 18 to participate in the Global Hackathon. Registration is still open. Even though we're starting the free training next week, students can still join late. They can watch the videos, and then they can participate in the live hackathon weekends that start in December. In fact, some of the Tech Trek girls have already registered. I worked with Mary Isaac Bonk to invite the Tech Trek girls, and some of them joined like in a heartbeat. They were excited, and I can't wait to see their creative ideas and their websites. So like I said, I'll drop those videos in the chat, and we welcome your participation as a partner, as a sponsor, help student to help fund student scholarships, prizes, additional workshops, and thank you in advance for your support and your time today.
Hello again. I guess I'm back here for part 3, AI for social good. So what is the big idea here? Again, why are we coming together? And how do we leverage this new technology, this new tool? And actually, I contend this, and everyone else does, or many people, we are in another industrial revolution. So how do we really use it to its greatest potential? And, I used to watch Star Trek, and I keep thinking about, are we going to get there someday? But in the meantime, these tools can be used to address all kinds of things, health and hunger issues or problems. Again, earlier in this today, again, people are talking about education, but it can look at, environmental issues or humanitarian aid. Wherever there's a problem, potentially there's a way to address it with this tool. Next slide, please. We've been reading for quite a while with AI. For example, one of the major success stories is out of England, where they were able to do protein folding analysis. It's the patterns. So in medicine, it's the patterns or trying to find things out. So in this case, it's trying to help doctors figure out, first of all, what is the problem and how to provide it in a personalized way that's right on for the individual. So it's acting like a superpowered medical assistant. Think about for example, all the literature doctors have to read and understand. The AI has gone through all of this stuff that's online. And for example, there's specialized large language models that are focused just on medicine, and building those out, training those as sources. So not only does it get an understanding of the text and what's been published, but it has an understanding of looking now at scans and health records that a person simply or an organization simply can't handle the volume. These are classic cases now in in AI medicine. It's the imaging. So I think for years now, again, earlier based on machine learning. Again, I mentioned earlier, it's not just the large language models that are part of AI, but it's also different machine learnings and sophisticated statistical models. So you have these models that understand the patterns in a picture. So they've been doing this for a while and just enhancing it. So x-rays for breast, for analyzing for breast cancer or CTs or MRIs. So it can go down to the level that it can compete or do better even than a radiologist, but can complement. You still need that radiologist or that doctor to interpret it. But just think how they can find the more smaller things or these patterns that are happening over time. I thought this was quite interesting. Recently, they put out models that can detect diabetic, I can't say the word well, neuropathy, so it's a leading case of blindness, or looking for early stage cancer tumors, as I said earlier, in mammograms or x-rays, or even deciphering things in blood or proteins in blood to point to potentials. In addition, for example, I don't have it on the slide, but looking at current existing medications and trying to figure out if they can be repurposed. The FDA, for example, may have approved the medication for one drug, but trying to find other applications. Again, it's sifting through information and testing. It's just it can handle just the sheer volume of information in all forms in text and an image. Next slide, please. And logistics, I mean, very divergent. In fact, I have worked in this area for many years as an applied mathematician, operations researcher. So, for example, in what started my Infomaker, my first firm, was I built a model for Kraft Foods to tell it how much cheese to buy, how long to age it, and where to send it to the finished goods plants. And it was like 140 types of cheese, over 50 plants, 40 warehouses at all temperatures and styles. This was pre-LLM, but it's been in the area for a while. Now these models are so powerful, these deep learning models and these LLMs can even do better, especially because they can see. So now we can apply them for global supply chain work and especially humanitarian crises to look at, like, for example, a picture of where something happened. The road, is the road blocked? Is there, where did the flood go? And analyze it faster than someone else can and activate and recommend paths, for example. So it can activate a resource faster and save resources. So again, many areas in commercial and in welfare for humans, these type of models can be applied. Next slide, please. In education, as we spoke earlier, it can supplement learning, but in this case, like one-on-one tutors, these large language models can help guide an individual for self-learning. And one example of this is the Khan Academy. So again, I have not used this product. This came up as an example. But if you don't understand it, it helps you. And I can understand how an LLM would do that and teach someone how to, learn a product or a topic. And again, it's always there 24/7. So it's free learning or low cost learning available at tutor for for yourself or someone who needs it. Next slide, please. So this is close to my heart. In the last couple of years, I got involved with the two major pantries in San Diego County. And between them, they really are addressing over 800,000 people that are considered nutritionally insecure. And this number is from an organization called the San Diego Hunger Coalition. For example, I work most closely with Feeding San Diego, and they have a couple of 200 pantries that serve the county, all types, either based out of churches or schools, or they actually will bring a truck to your neighborhood and distribute food. In fact, they do that in my neighborhood. Every other week, they bring in produce and distribute it. And so this is a serious problem because our county in San Diego is about 3.2 or 3.3 million people. So if you think about 800,000 people who don't have all the food they need, or it's not the best kind of food, this is a problem. And in fact, the CEO of Feeding San Diego was telling me, I believe in like July, they had like 400,000 families come across their food banks. And I'm sure right now it's even more. And they are doing special distributions now to help the military who aren't getting paid, the TSA workers and the Border Patrol folks, with extra. So think about deploying all this stuff. So I, in fact, again, as an aside, have done other types of work for them. In fact, I've done basic data analysis and statistics and optimization programming. But I came across this idea last year. It's like, you have a lot of these people who just don't speak English or speak it well. They may not have a computer. Now, both food banks have an online source of where to look up, and it does present in multiple languages of where to find these food banks and their hours. But it occurred to me, there are people who don't even have internet access, who can't afford it. They may not have a smartphone. It could be a catastrophe. In fact, talking to the Houston Food Bank to make them aware of what I was working on, I go, you have a flood there. People can't even get to a computer, or if they don't have a smartphone, how are they going to get information? So anyway, last year I came up with the idea of why can't we use AI in a novel way and have it tell people where to find these resources. And to help do this this project, I incorporated my own nonprofit so I could go solicit for donations and funds. And what it is it's a voice bot, what it's called, and you can call it. Can you change slides, please? oops, went too far. Okay. I called it AI for food. Affectionately, it's called Alfie. But what I've done is, and this is a proof of concept project based with the information from Feeding San Diego. But my hope is it could be rolled out nationally to address not only telling people where the food banks are, but also maybe incorporated too if there's emergencies or other types of things. But basically, it's focused on people who don't have computer access, uh, and they may not speak English. So this is a voice bot that you literally call a number and it'll ask you what language would you like to speak in. And the software it's built on can answer in about 20 to 30 languages. So for example, in San Diego, the most common languages other than English are Spanish, Vietnamese, and Tagalog. And so we will be deploying this voice bot to answer questions like, where is the closest food bank to my zip code? Or what pantries are open in my town of Alpine? It's open after Tuesday after 2 p.m. Or, what are specialized pantries just serving seniors or the military? So again, these LLMs, it's LLM based. It understands this document or this table of all this information and it conveys it in a normal human language to the individual. And people can call it 24/7. So if you're a family, so unfortunately with the SNAP being food stamp program, this now being disabled or cut back immensely, where are you going to find a food pantry if you get a call? So once these numbers are published, which we're working on hopefully to deploy Alfie this month, you'll be able to call and look to see, is there something near you? Or if you work throughout the county, let's say you can't get to a food bank, until until the weekend, and and you're willing to drive somewhere or get there, you can ask it, where's the food bank open on Saturdays? Or that type of thing. So it's like talking to another individual in your own language. So this is kind of like I want to show how well this can work and be enabled in other ways. Next slide, please. So really, as you saw throughout this talk, AI is like a tool. In this case, it's voice. There are people now using, for example, voiced AI. Not only can it, as we mentioned earlier, does it learn from text and perceives and visually if it needs to, but now you have this translation and voice, it understands voice and sound. And I'm leveraging in this case that application, and it is LLM based to help people answer questions. So think about the potential of having an Alfie type project for people calling Social Security and trying to get an answer. Instead of waiting for a human to give them a basic answer, you could have an Alfie like project answer it. Or you're looking for housing. I'm hoping to leverage this maybe someday to help the homeless. And in fact, ironically, there were a few homeless people I ran into recently, asking for contributions. And I gave them a few dollars. And I said, there's a food bank near here. And they go, oh, I didn't know. And I ended up calling Alfie because it wasn't published yet to ask what the hours were nearby. So if they could see this phone number posted somewhere, they themselves, if they have a phone, could call. They're not going to have internet. I mean, so they could call and find out, where is the food bank near me? When is it posted? So I'm hoping to get this knowledge out there, not just for food insecure people, but just be able to show how this technology can be used other than the call center, like Best Buy saying, I need to return my laptop. What do I do? Or that type of thing. But really solve and address some of the social concerns and help some of the social benefit companies, social service companies to, use this as a tool to extend themselves 24/7 and in many languages. So next slide, I think I'm done. Let me go. There we go. Oh, this is the interesting slide here. So all the text that you saw that here, I asked Gemini, which is Google's LLM, to prepare for me. So I had a place to start to speak. And so this is the prompt that I gave Google Gemini 2.5. This is a recent version, and it could deal with my bad spelling and bad grammar. And I let it churn. And so when you do some prompting, for example, in these LLMs, it's actually how to put this? it's a skill that one has to develop, and there's many things published on the internet, like how to prompt, exactly classes you can take online about prompting. And then one of the key things is to give it a goal and the tasks in a certain fashion. So in this case, I told it the goal is give me a 15-minute presentation. And I described who my audience was. And I also told it the types of things I wanted to address. And it came back in a couple of minutes. And I actually made the PowerPoint, but I didn't like the layout. So I relayed it. But basically, the content that you saw that I presented was from me prompting this. Uh, so I could have written it by hand. I could have looked up all the stuff and developed it, and it took many hours. So I spent more of my time just enhancing what the language model gave me, and added more detail that I wanted, um, and then laid it out and presented it to you. So this is the power of it. I've used another example of using the LLM. Okay, not just you saw, I talked about medicine, logistics, and food hungry, just writing. So for example, when I went to look for donations, because you have to pay, Alfie was written on a third-party software product that's based on a language model. But you have to pay for the phone minutes, and you have to pay for the use of the language model and the tools within this product to build out the voice bot. And I asked different organizations. I actually asked Feeding America, and they did not return. I asked, I think, for quite a bit of money to do it, and they did not respond or were not ready to do it. And I thought, this doesn't make sense. I really need to go to a place that doesn't take money away from people for food. I went to Bland AI, which is the firm I use to build the voice bot, and their co-founder, one was from San Diego. I wrote to him and I said, could you please fund this project? But I had AI help you write the letter. Again, I gave it the goal of what I wanted it to do. I gave it the points I wanted to be made, and I gave it to Claude, that LLM, and it wrote the letter, and it did such far better job than I could have done. And I'm not bad at writing, but it came back just more elegantly, and even the closing was more elegant. And I was so thrilled that Bland came back and they are funding the costs. They're going to absorb it for the phone calling and the software for a year, so we can do this project. So, we're still looking for donations to help with operating costs, type of thing, because you have to pay for insurance and other things. But the biggest cost was the cost of using the language model and the phone. And Bland AI came through, and we're just delighted. And we hope maybe in 6 months to a year, we can publish and talk about this and give an example of the power of AI with language, to show other social services or what can be done to help people. I especially see it important for like emergencies. In fact, in January, I did write a prototype for all the pantries in uh, Los Angeles due to the fire, but I was concerned about not having tested well enough. But I knew myself these models could handle that. So on that, I'm going to close. If you want to reach me, I think the next slide has my email or one of them. I think you have one more in there somewhere. There you go. You can reach me actually through my email from my for-profit company. I like to keep things simple at infomaker.com. Or you can reach me on LinkedIn too, and send me a note. So as I said, I have the nonprofit I started at the beginning of this year, I think more just to enable getting funding for this project and made us more flexible. And then I do some consulting on the side still through Infomaker. But I retired from Qualcomm in 2018. So I was there for quite a while. So you can reach out to me at m@infomaker.com or ping me on LinkedIn. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention today.
All right. I'm going to open us up. I'm going to stop sharing and open us for a Q&A. I'm going to ask actually some of the questions that came through. First, there's one that's specifically for Maria, since we just covered that material. And that is just an informational. Is Alfie available for all of San Diego County? And what is the phone number? Was the question.
Okay. Alfie will be based on Feeding San Diego's data. We will not have yet, I don't know when we'll get there. We haven't chatted with them, frankly. with the Jacobs and Cushman San Diego Food Bank. So it'll be focused on the pantries that Feeding San Diego serves. I'm hoping to launch Alfie within the month. Right now, my snag, believe it or not, is getting insurance coverage. So just an aside, if any of you in the tech area, if let's say you're an independent consultant or you have your own firm, this was a case when I had Infomaker was quite active. Like a doctor or a lawyer, there's professional liability insurance. It's called errors and omissions. And I thought getting errors and omissions is going to be a piece of cake. I did it before. And when I went to find out, they look at AI as a more problematic area. So I am in fact looking to cover it with special insurance that can deal with AI. Because as I mentioned in the very beginning of this conference, AI is probabilistic. These language models are probabilistic. You cannot guarantee that they will always be right or give you exactly what you want. And so as I approach these firms, they go, oh no, this is different insurance and it costs a lot more. So that's my snag right now that I'm trying to address the next week. In the meantime, also, I'm enhancing the model to be more automatic with this update. So I'm hoping to, to get it out there this month. So I'm not giving the phone number out yet, sorry. And then also that Feeding San Diego will help get publicize this number. I have to chat with them how we want to do it. I mean, I would envision them handing it out. I like at libraries because I've heard librarians get asked questions, social service areas handing it out, that type of thing. But I'm not there yet, really more for an issue with insuring the company, believe it or not. So tune in later and see how it works out. But it's been an unexpected headache because I did run Infomaker Inc. for many years. We achieved 2 million in sales and I had huge customers and I had all the insurance I need, but this is a different animal. AI is probabilistic and there's not a whole lot of insurance companies that will cover the liability insurance for that. So I'm on the hunt for this. All right, if any of you have an idea, email me, please. I would appreciate it. So does that help answer the question?
Yes, thanks, Maria. There's another question about real and fake data, but let me ask one to Shauna first, just an informational question. Shauna, you have a question that says, someone here has an unfocused 18-year-old relative in the Fresno area, and they want to know how he can access your programs.
Absolutely. Have him go to our website. It's www, I'll put it in the chat too, www.wctd.org. And we would love to have, I don't know why I'm assuming it's a him. We would love to have your relative join the hackathon that's going on right now.
Thanks, Shauna. I will go from the top of the Q&A, and then we had one in the chat. So another one for you, Shauna, is from Janice. Says the programs described sound really great, but they all require digital access. So would that be a roadblock to many?
No, that's a great question. And for our programs, for example, in New York or in the US, we have laptops. We have loaner laptops that we literally ship to our students that don't have computers. Internet access is required. It's on them to find that or have that, but most people, a lot of people do in the US. If not, they can go to a library or a community center, but we provide the technology. In other countries, now, I don't think that our small organization can tackle that issue as far as infrastructure in Nigeria or any other low-income country. We have done a program in Nigeria and that was an issue. And they had problems because they pay for internet access with data. I mean, like with minutes out there, they pay for their data. And perhaps that's something if we can generate more funds or through fundraising, we could pay for their minutes. Other more remote locations, I think larger companies are working on that with satellites right? And internet access. So as that develops, we'll be ready to deliver the education.
Thanks, Shauna. All right, so the remaining questions are, I think, for all of us. So I will first ask a question that came in early, and that is, how do the large language models distinguish between real data and fake data? Um, and I think Maria, you started to kind of grapple with this a little in the insurance, right? The probabilistic nature of how they're responding. But does do Maria and Shauna first want to take this one about how they distinguish between real and fake data?
I don't think I have a good answer for that, frankly. Um, it would probably depend on each platform, like a Facebook versus a political site, how they do it. I do know in the simplest form, in a commercial application, just checking for bad computations or data, you will have one AI check on another, believe it or not. But for fake data, sorry, I can't give you a good complete answer on that one.
I
I would presume that these very sophisticated firms have something in place for checking. Obviously, they have checking, for bad language or pornograph. So I suspect something's there, but that would take a serious analysis to figure out what it is. And it would probably could even be unique to each platform, like social media platform too.
Yeah, I think and from my understanding, this is also one of the areas that there's a need of improvement because the models are trained based on patterns. And so it depends on, how they're trained and if they're trained in material that is explicitly cited as being potentially disinformation. But this is one of the areas that there's some need of improvement, especially on the widely available platforms, is the weighing of the quality of some of the information. Like I said, there's if you, for instance, if you do a Google search and you see the AI kind of stuff that comes up at the top and it's all linked to the original sourcing, sometimes you'll see that your results for your query will be, a peer-reviewed article will be weighed the same as like a blog post. And so that's something that is still, I think, needs to be improved, needs to be improved upon. But it's really being trained on patterns. And so it depends on that in the back end kind of parameters that Maria was talking about. I hope that answers that question a bit. All right, I have a language question from Sandra. Um, so, how do you promote? And I think this one was explicitly for you, Maria, but is kind of a larger question about language, and that is, how do you promote the bot in multiple languages? And she said she was thinking of a problem encountered when a Spanish-speaking person called the church, and she was doing receptionist duty, and no one in the office spoke Spanish. So, um, Maria, I don't know if you want to take that one first.
So yeah, it's a live situation. I'm trying to think. I mean, the LLMs can speak depending on whether it's in text, if it's in text. Like I have a chatbot on the Infomaker site based on the Google product, and it can do probably 50 languages, but that's on text. I don't know. The only thing I could think of that would be, if it exists, would be an interesting application where if they call, let's say they call a smartphone, and then the smartphone itself does live translation in text for the individual. It may already be there, but if not, it could be accomplished by, the Sprint or Verizon kind of stuff, or your Google Pixel. So the underlying technology is there. Um, but if it's like calling a landline and they're talking in Spanish, I don't really have an answer unless you put your smartphone next to it. Honestly, well, they show commercials on this. Put your smartphone next to it and does the translation live for you. Have you seen those commercials where like this person goes to a restaurant, I think a Thai restaurant, and the owner of the restaurant and the customer are conversing in different languages, and the smartphone is translating it for them? So it's kind of a kludge, but it might be possible.
Yep.
So the potential technology is there, if not already. I just am not aware of a direct application.
Yeah, there are, I agree with Maria. There's already some things that are available that are multilingual tools. I think they, like a few weeks ago, one promoted a wearable. It reminded me of, I don't know if y'all ever read the you know some of the sci-fi novels, but there's a babblefish that you put in your ear, right? That translates everything automatically, and there are a few companies that are looking to create that as a commercial product. So I think if it doesn't exist already, it is on its way. And that is going to be really kind of another interesting set of tools.
I will add though, it is pretty amazing what they could do
Yeah.
because I could call Elfie. Actually, I was calling Google. I did this Elfie in two products. I went away from Google part of it because I didn't get funding from them. But um, you could call up their voice bot or their voice and say, I want to speak in Swahili. And you could just keep changing languages. It's mind blowing.
Yeah,
On what it is, or you call Alfie, go speak to me in Chinese, and it just flips over and it does it. It's just mind blowing.
absolutely. There's been a lot of advancement on multilingual. In another life, I did language documentation work, and some of my friends that were doing that kind of work ended up working for Google to help develop the kinds of the that kind of translation work. So it's very, very cool technology. Um, Okay, so one other kind of question here. I think we have time for one more, so I'm going to ask this one. I think it's a great question from Carolyn. What can we be doing to get seniors more involved in using AI? Within our AAUW organizations in Colorado, we have a large population of seniors. AI is now just one more technology that people are hesitant to learn and use. What are ways within our branches and state organizations that we should be looking to AI? That is a great question. I don't know if we can answer it in 3 minutes, but I wanted to make sure I put it out there for us.
I just have a simple answer, and that's if they know how to submit a Google query, like they're looking up, like where can I, find a florist in the zip code, and you're literally Googling a question. As you know, ChatGPT is just like that. They open a window and pretend it's a Google query and just type it in. You'll just get a lot more information. So just say it's just like Google, but just go to a different site. And in fact, as you pointed out earlier, Google itself now is using their AI to answer questions. So it's already there.
Yeah, and I think I would add, one of the reasons I wanted to start this little webinar with like the history of technology integration is to try to quell people's fears about new
Mhm.
technology and really think about it as something that it really is a tool that's complementary rather than getting out of this idea that it is destroying humanity or is like going to take over humanity or and really just think of it as another tool to get people in the mindset to use it. And the second thing I would say is that any sort of media literacy classes or materials will be good for not just navigating the internet, but navigating AI as a new technology, because it does take a new form of literacy to be able to engage with these tools, as Maria noted, to like write prompts that are going to get you the things that you need. And so I think that would be my response about thinking about it twofold. But one, quelling fear, and two, showing them how it's useful. I don't know, Carolyn, maybe have them watch part of this webinar, especially Maria and Shauna's sections about, all the really cool things that are being done for social good and for improving people's station in life might be a good way to get folks more involved.
I would love to comment on that too, quickly.
Yeah.
Carolyn, if your members or your state chapter are interested in virtual learning, we would be open to a discussion on that, on collaboration, on bringing a virtual training to you. well, literally, or not literally, but figuratively. And some of our programs, we can incorporate speakers that you're familiar with. We can invite Missy, we can invite Maria, and they could be guest lecturers. We could customize a workshop for you if that's something you're interested in. Please let me know. That's one option.
That's awesome, Shauna. And um, we have we're out of time, so I want to just mention to everyone one thing that Maria shared with us this morning for any outstanding questions. So Maria used Claude to go through all the questions that you submitted during your registration and had Claude do a first pass of answering them. So we have answers to all of those questions that you had that we might not have gotten to. And anything that we have outstanding here in the Q&A, we will, Claude or Shauna or Maria or me will take a stab at those questions. We thank you all so much for your attention and willingness to engage with us on AI and your interest in thinking about how it can be used for social good. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.